sold out for the next 30 days. Travellers snapping up seats on the land VTL bus service to Malaysia. For the third day, some DBS customers are experiencing problems with digital banking services. And in COVID-19 news, Novavax applies for approval to use its vaccine in Singapore. You're watching The Big Story. I'm Olivia Quay. You can subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode. Tickets for the Singapore-Malaysia land vaccinated travel lane going on sale today. My colleague managed to snag a ticket for himself and he was one of the lucky few. According to this message on bus company Transtar Travel's website this morning, all tickets for the next 30 days were sold out. However, some netizens said they were still able to book tickets after. Journalist Ang Qing is here to give us a better idea of what happened this morning. Only 2 bus operators facilitating travel across the land VTL in this initial phase, Ang Qing. So let's cover Transtar Travel first, a Singapore bus company. What were the issues on that website?
So I have been waiting on actually both websites since about 7:30 a.m. And at 8 a.m. that's when both sites, like the tickets went on sale. And the moment it went on sale, for both websites, we were placed in virtual waiting rooms. But for the Transtar website, there was no indication of like your place in the waiting room. So you didn't know how long it would take before you could get into the website. I think about 20 minutes in, at 8:23 a.m., there was this notice that said that all the tickets had been sold out for the next 30 days. So that's quite a lot of days. But a few hours later, there were some reports or Facebook comments saying that people actually managed to get tickets after that notice that said that all tickets had been sold out. And actually much later after that notice, there was another notice saying that there was just a high volume of traffic on the website and users could just wait a few moments. But one Facebook comment said that about he had been waiting since 8 a.m. and at about 2:45 p.m. he managed to gain access to book a ticket. So people have been able to get tickets. It's just taken a really, really long time for them to get there.
Right. Well, a bit of confusion over there at Transtar Travel, the Transtar Travel website. So how about on the side of the Malaysia bus company Handal Indah? Something similar or some different issues that they faced?
So for the Malaysian bus company, it was a bit different because the website crashed intermittently. I mean, occasionally it was like 443 error alerts and people just couldn't get in. And I mean, the good thing about that website was that you actually had some indication of where you were, like how long it would take for you to gain access to the website. So I was like queue number 3,000 and something. And at one point, there were about 10,000 people queuing up to get into book tickets. But even after getting onto the website, there were issues clicking or actually just selecting Singapore and Malaysia and gaining access to the payment page. And some people were even booted out when they tried to pay for their tickets.
Well, Ang Qing, sounds like, quite a bit of hassle, quite a bit of teething problems right now. Do you foresee the same issues recurring, especially if the daily quota increases? And, what are the possible ways to ease the congestion?
I think it's quite hard because you're still dealing with a quota and there are just a lot of people who want to get in since the borders closed about 20 months ago. Yeah, so it's very hard to resolve the situation. I think one thing that really helped for the Malaysian bus company's website was that there was some indication of where you were in the queue. So there is some sense of, certainty, even though you might not get the ticket. Yeah, but at least you know where you stand. Yeah, but I don't think it's something that's easily resolved. I mean, you could always pump in more resources like the ICA website where, at first the website crashed, but I think eventually it managed to deal with the high volumes of people trying to book things. So yeah, they could introduce that.
Well, thanks so much, Qing. Journalist Ang Qing there. COVID-19 infections breaking records in parts of Europe, with the continent once again the epicenter of a pandemic. Slovakia, the Czech Republic, the Netherlands and Hungary all reported new highs in daily cases. The surge in infections has prompted a number of countries, including France, Germany and Greece, to soon make booster jabs a requirement for their citizens. WHO has warned that Europe and Central Asia could face another 700,000 COVID-19 deaths by March. Deaths rose to nearly 4,200 per day last week, double the number recorded at the end of September. Meanwhile, the European Commission says that Singapore and the EU have agreed on recognizing their respective vaccine certificates as equal. This means you can prove your vaccination status in Europe by showing your COVID-19 records in your Health Hub app. And a new COVID-19 vaccine could be available on our shores. US firm Novavax applying for approval to use its non-mRNA jab here. The Health Sciences Authority confirmed this and that Novavax had submitted data for review earlier this week. If approved, the supply of the Novavax vaccine would make it the 5th vaccine to be available in Singapore. DBS's digital banking services have yet to return to normal 3 days after the disruption first occurred. As at this morning, some customers were still unable to make transactions on the bank's website and mobile app. Others saying they managed to log in but could not make transactions or view their previous debits and credits. It's the bank's worst outage in more than a decade.
We acknowledge the gravity of the situation. And as we work to resolve matters, we seek your patience and understanding. In the meantime, I want to assure you that your deposits and monies are safe and that you can continue with your banking needs either through our branches or through phone banking.
And in its last update at 10:35 p.m. last night, DBS said its digital banking services are returning to normal and it's monitoring the situation closely. To shed more light on this is journalist Rei Kurohi. Rei, this is DBS's worst disruption since 2010 when a major systems failure took down all of its consumer and business banking services. But what makes this incident so serious?
Well, Olivia, I think we're looking primarily at the length of time that the services were affected. We don't have an exact number of hours because yesterday morning, DBS did say that most of their services were back online, but then the problem recurred. So some users were facing issues again yesterday morning, but overall it has lasted, we could say 2 days. This morning, there were still some users facing issues, but DBS said that they just need to reset their apps.
Right. So DBS's country manager for Singapore says the access control servers is responsible. Now, these are part of a bank's security system handling login and payment verification. So having said that, does it point to a cybersecurity breach?
Well, DBS hasn't specified the reason for the incident, but one of the cybersecurity experts I spoke to yesterday did indicate that in his experience, the worst case scenario, like a cyber attack, is usually recognized quite quickly. So I imagine if it were, in fact, a cybersecurity incident, they would have wanted to make that known as quickly as possible.
And Rei, do you know of any specific cases of how businesses were affected by this disruption?
So into the second day of the disruption yesterday, we did see that some of the functions had already come back online. We're talking about ATM withdrawals, card payments, and even the DBS PayLah app, which is a separate app from the main DBS digital banking app. So this means that if a business relied primarily on card payments or used PayLah, then they wouldn't really be affected. It would be more the smaller businesses, perhaps, that rely primarily on Pay Now. But thinking, I spoke to a hairdresser who said some of her customers usually pay her by Pay Now, have difficulties. There was also a home baker who said something similar. So I think it will primarily be those smaller businesses that would have been affected.
Well, Rei, looking forward, the Monetary Authority of Singapore has said it will consider supervisory actions. What could that entail and what other repercussions could DBS face?
Well, it can range from anything from a reprimand, which is simply where the MAS tells the bank, please do better, to a fine or other regulatory actions. In 2010, as the incident you mentioned earlier, in that incident, DBS was asked to set aside about $230 million extra in regulatory capital for operational risk. Because essentially what that means is they had to lock up that amount just in case of any other issues. In terms of other reputational hits, for example, we know that DBS has been named the best bank in the world for the last few years, and perhaps that That could be one area where consumers' confidence in the bank might be shaken. I spoke to one customer yesterday who said that she only used DBS for internet banking, and she was unable to make a fairly urgent payment. So she was considering switching to another bank, or at least setting up internet banking with one of her other banks as a result of this incident.
Well, Rei, thank you so much for your time. Rei Kurohi, journalist for the Straits Times.
Thanks, Olivia.
In other local news, the worsening shortage of nurses has prompted at least one private hospital group here to offer a finder's fee. Staff who can rope in an experienced nurse to join will be given up to $12,000, and introducing a fresh graduate nurse could get them at least $3,600. Last year, for the first time in more than 2 decades, Singapore saw a drop in the number of nurses working here. Pleading guilty in court today, this 19-year-old caught on video doing a backflip inside the white rhino enclosure at the Singapore Zoo. Ralph Wee Yi Kai admitting to 8 charges for offences including mischief and criminal trespass. He had performed the stunt on December 17th last year. And 41 people have lost $203,000 to a scam involving movie tickets. According to police, they were tricked into thinking they could earn a commission by buying and selling tickets on websites linked to a firm called FilmGo. Time for Life Picks. 2 things out on the big screen from today, starting with The Rescue. It's a documentary about the 2018 Thai cave rescue efforts. Remember that? 12 boys and their football coach trapped in a flooded cave in northern Thailand. And this documentary explores how expert divers navigated that rescue. Here with more is film correspondent John Louis. So John, what happened in 2018 was gripping, to say the least. The awful situation that the boys were in, and thankfully the ordeal ended on a largely happy note, I would say. It's also so visual. So what kind of footage can we expect to see in this documentary?
Okay, after the event, the whole world, the media teams, production companies wanted that story. So there have been 1 or 2 things out already, but the major things are this documentary and a Netflix thing that's coming out next year. So this one from National Geographic, who are leaders in documentaries, they've taken an Oscar award-winning team of 2 writers, directors, and producers, Elizabeth Chai Vasily and Jimmy Chin, and they have taken footage from the point of view of the cave divers, the mostly British team of cave divers, and the Thai Navy SEALs. So this whole film is archive footage as well as reenactments and graphics taken from the point of view of the people at the spearhead of the operation. So it's a technical film but very satisfying as well if you want to know the nuts and bolts of the operation.
I see. Well, John, I remember in 2018, I was quite riveted to the entire story and the sequence of events. So I can imagine I'll be quite emotional if I saw it. After you caught it, what left an impact for you?
Yeah, it was an emotional event. The thing about documentaries is that some of them are very manipulative emotionally. They tell you how you feel. They'll use dramatic music and lighting cues and color grading and all kinds of funny tricks to tell you how you should feel sad here, you should feel uplifted at this other point. This one doesn't. This one they know they've got brilliant footage. I mean, these are the GoPros that the divers had on their equipment going through the caves, and these are also cameras that were used by the Thai Navy SEALs. One of them, a former Thai Navy SEAL, died during the operation, if you remember. So this is brilliant footage, especially if you know a little bit about diving, and if you want to know how scary it was. We know it was scary, but when the cave divers are explaining it to you and you can see the footage, it's scarier than most horror films.
Well, thanks for that, John. The rescue opens today exclusively at the projector. Our next pick is also based on real events and real people, a biopic on Canto pop legend Anita Mui. Now, she died in 2003 at 40 years old following a battle with cervical cancer. Journalist Jan Lee is here with her take on this biopic. So, Jan, let's first cover its overall mood, tone, as well as the focus of the film. What can you tell us about that?
Okay, so focus-wise, it's quite straightforward. It is just a retelling of her life from when she was a kid, performing at, like she called amusement park, to, her later life, including her battle with cervical cancer and her last performance in her life, right? Because famously, she held, I think it was 8 concerts 2 months before she died, because she wanted to marry herself to the stage. She wanted to have one last chance to share the stage with her fans and everybody. So the mood and tone wise, it's very nostalgic because it definitely is a production that put in effort to recreate Hong Kong in the 1970s and the 1980s and later on the 1990s when Anita Mui was very famous. And it is quite it's not the kind of Hong Kong that you see now because things change a lot in 20-30 years. There are new buildings, things get torn down. So you see all these scenes of Hong Kong that you just don't really see anymore, like this neon lights, this old amusement parks, old theaters, that she used to perform at. So it's very nostalgic. I think that's the overwhelming sense I get from the movie.
Okay. Well, model actress Louise Wong, she portrays Anita Mui. How did she fare in that role, Jen?
Apparently, it took years for them to find a good candidate to play Anita Mui. And I think Louise Wong was chosen in part because she does have a resemblance to Anita Mui, her facial resemblance. But I think she does okay. I think she's better in the first part of the movie when Anita Mui is still a rising star, when she's just new to the industry. She went to a competition and that's how she got discovered and managed to have an album out. So like the first part of the movie where she's rising, she's a little bit unsure of herself because she's not yet a superstar, right? Even though she has just boundless talent. That part of the movie, I think she does quite well. I think near the second half of the movie where Anita Mui is already very, very established. She is a superstar, like just, bona fide superstar. She lacks a little bit of that fearlessness that people remember of her, that aura that people remember of Anita Mui. But I would say that the costumes and I think the voice, because from what I understand, I think it was something similar to Bohemian Rhapsody where they merged Freddie Mercury's voice with Rami Malek's voice. So they sort of merged Louise Wong's voice with Anita Mui. And I think Louise Wong went through some training to make sure she can sound like her, sound like Anita Mui, I mean. So it does help, like the costumes, the staging, and you hear her sing. It's quite hard not to feel emotional.
Well, thanks so much, Jan. The Anita Mui biopic is out in cinemas now. Well, to wrap up today's live picks, our food editor Tan Xue Yun is here to talk about Niche Severity. It's a cafe in Toa Payoh serving a mainly Western menu. Now, Xue, this is especially useful for myself and our colleagues who still go to the office and don't mind walking a bit for a meal. So what are your top picks over at that place?
Well, I really love the Gula Melaka cappuccino. So I've had Gula Melaka with coffee and tea at various places. And usually the intensity is not there and, the quality of the Gula Melaka is not great. But this one is so aromatic. There's a smoky flavor and there's enough of it that makes the cappuccino not too sweet, but you also get the taste of the Gula Melaka. So I'm kind of addicted to it actually. And the other thing I like about this cafe is that they do very good cakes. And the Onde cake is fantastic. It's really light. And it's not like this horrible fluorescent green from fake colouring. So you know that they actually bother to go, puree the pandan leaves and you squeeze out the juice. And the frosting's not too sweet. And there's this toasted coconut on top, which is so good. Gula Melaka cappuccino and a slice of the Onde cake, and that's a perfect tea time treat.
Exactly. Well, lucky for us, it's just a walk away. Thanks so much, Shreya. And you can find Niche Sevaru at Block 128 Tua Payoh, Lorong 1. As always, the Friday pages in tomorrow's paper will have more weekend picks. Visit straitstimes.com for more news and our YouTube channel for more videos. Subscribe by hitting the red button below. I'm Olivia Quake. See you tomorrow on The Big Story.